We now go to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Thank you. I want to follow up on the gentlelady's mention of the screening workshop on July 28th, which clearly states in their training manual, look for terms such as Republican Democrat, look for donkey elephant, look for Tea Party, and look for progressives. So they were training, according to their own training manual, that they were to look for progressives when they were looking for this, quote, political activity. So I think it's very clear that in their training manual, they were saying, look for political activity, Republican, Democratic, conservative, liberal, and Tea Party and progressive. Did you have this training manual? Did you ever see this training manual?
Mrs. Maloney, we received that document last Tuesday. And
okay.
This is over a year of conducting an audit. They withheld that document.
Well, do you know why you never received this document?
We do not, and it raises concerns about other documents.
Yeah, but you also looked at, according to your testimony, over 5,500 emails, and did they not come across any claims relating in any way, shape, or form in all these 5,000 emails to the training session of what they are to look for?
As we weren't looking for that, that was not one of the search terms used to review the 5,000 emails.
Well, would you agree now that we have the training manual that the IRS was training their employees to likewise look at progressives?
That we will have to review that and make that determination. That unfortunately would require us either to amend the audit, which is a possibility, or as I've indicated before, I think you arrived, I've instructed my staff to conduct an audit to see how the other be on the lookout BOLO lists were utilized. Unfortunately, most of this has to wait until after we've completed our work with the FBI, with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, and ourselves for fear of interfering with that matter.
Is it clear from this training manual that they were asking them to look at progressives too?
I'm not sure. I really.
Well, I think you should look at it and study it. It says progressive real big, and get back to us on whether you think the training manual included progressive. And Mr. George, you've been in politics a long time. You know that there are Democrats and Republicans out there. You know that there's liberals and conservatives. It's hard for me to believe it's beyond belief that you would conduct an audit that only looked at Tea Party. That makes no sense whatsoever. I know that I wrote a letter of recommendation in support of you, even though you were Republican, because we worked together and I respected your work. Yet, I cannot believe that you called for an audit that only looked at Tea Party when you know that there's a whole array of political activity. That's called targeting. That's called going after people. Some Republicans, in their public statements, and I have a list of them, have tried to smear the president and said he did this and he did that. I would say that your audit tried to smear, I don't know, someone, or tried to blame someone by excluding a whole swath of the political establishment. I think an 8th grade class that was to do an audit of what was happening politically for people asking for status would look at both sides. That's common sense. How in the world did you get to the point that you only looked at Tea Party when liberals and progressives and Occupy Wall Street and conservatives are just as active, if not more active, and would certainly be under consideration? That is just common, plain sense. And I think that some of your statements have not been, it defies logic, it defies belief that you would so limit your statements and write to Mr. Levin and write to Mr. Conley that, of course, no one was looking at any other area. It's common sense. If they have certain regulations that they thought was a law, I think the law should be changed. I don't think there should be any exemption for or tax deduction for political activity. But you know that there's political activity on both sides, right? Why wouldn't you look at both sides? That would be the fair thing to do. That would be the common sense thing to do. That would be an appropriate audit. It's like saying look for wrongdoing in the bank, but only look at overdraft fees. Everybody knows there are a whole swath of areas that you could look at. So to limit it defies logic, I am mystified that a distinguished professional would put forward an audit that looks at only a very thin sliver when the training documents, when the letters, when plain common sense dictates that there is a whole array of political activity in our great country.
I thank the gentlelady, and I know there wasn't a question there, but Mr. George, I think you've got an answer.
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate this. Mr. Maloney, first of all, we received allegations from members of Congress and from media reports about a particular activity that was occurring, all right? And it wasn't just Tea Parties. It was Patriot, it was 9/12. So we were charged, both through a request from Congress as well as through our audit process, and this was in our audit plan to look at how tax-exempt organizations were treated. Now, never once did I ever indicate that we would limit our review to just how these particular groups were treated.
But you did.
Well, ma'am, it takes a year. This audit took a year. And yes, if you wanted us to wait another year before completing a fuller audit, we can, but that doesn't serve the American people. It doesn't serve the IRS well. Once we find the IRS is engaged in inappropriate behavior, and there are many examples of this, we alert them so that they can stem that behavior so that American taxpayers aren't unduly harmed and that the IRS can take corrective action. And so now I hope this discussion obviously will benefit any other group that might be inappropriately targeted, for lack of a better word, or treated by the Internal Revenue Service. And so, so then you would acknowledge groups, 501c4s, regardless of their political persuasion, should not have had to wait 3 years to get their status approved. That was wrong. I don't care what political party or political view they hold, Mrs. Maloney. I don't care. I do care that the IRS does the job it's supposed to do, and it didn't. It was gross mismanagement, and it was poorly handled, and it was released before our report was...
I would say that your audit was mismanagement. And I would say that
the gentlelady's time has the gentlelady's time has expired.
Point of personal privilege to respond.
To respond to, after your time is finished, to making another attack on...
No, to make a request of information for this committee that will help us get to the bottom of this.
I would look forward to seeing that in writing.
Okay.
Thank you. We now go to the gentleman from California, Mr.